weapons make music, and the enemy calls for a song.
I'm sending auxiliary life support.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel, and thank you for clicking on the video. Today, we're going to be going over Nova first. Now, I originally thought the Incarnans were going to release, but they are actually being moved to next weekly reset, which is fine. So instead, we're going to be covering Nova and a couple of other things on this channel today. First, with Nova, she received a rework, all of her scales got touched, and if you're curious how they changed, here's a short snippet of every change that came with this update.
As an enemy that's slowed down, they have increased chance to drop a health orb, and if the enemy is sped up, they have an increased chance to drop an energy orb. And that kind of gives you a hint of where we're going later on, so I'll save that for later. Null Star is now recastable by default. Also, we increased the base amount of particles it has, and now the damage reduction from each particle scales with strength, so between those two things it's much easier to get to the cap of damage reduction. We also changed how the damage reduction works. Before it only affected health. Now it affects health and shields. We also changed the damage to blast. In fact, all of her abilities used to be all over the place in terms of which types of damage it did. Now they all do blast, and this one in particular has a guaranteed status and an increased base damage, so it's much more effective. For antimatter drop, we made it so that it's much easier to control. As you move your camera around, it will actually stay much closer to the center of your view. You will also now be able to recast whenever you want, and that'll make it travel much faster to whatever destination you're giving it. So it's much easier for you to like cast it, charge it, and then drop it as a bomb wherever you desire. And we also made it a little larger so it's easier to hit, and now it has a much better communication for as it charges, it starts filling up. Also, we changed the charge mechanics so that it works better at lower levels of gear as well as higher levels of gear. For Wormhole, it used to have duration and charges, now it only has charges, and we now can see it visibly on top of the portal so you can know how many charges it had left. Also, we made it so that when you press and hold the ability, you get a better preview of where you're going to end up being teleported to. And as I teased earlier when I was talking about the passive, now Molecular Prime has a hold cast, which will do the fast version. So you have the normal version on top and the fast version on hold. And now you don't need to go into negative strength to actually get the fast version. And we also added so that the multiplier now affects more than it used to. Before it only affected damage to health, now it also affects damage to shields and to overguard. And we also did a pass across the game to all the different frames, and we actually made it standardized like that. Some of them already did that, a lot of them were only doing it to health or health and shields. It was pretty inconsistent. Now we made it consistent across the board.
Now, why are these changes important? Well, Nova was really good at the beginning. She hasn't been looked at in years, and I think Pablo was really just looking for a way to modernize her kit and stop having things be one way or the other way, right? Now you can play her with one build, and you don't have to swap between two different builds for two different fourth skill functions anymore. Now everything's dependent on your strength, no longer needing negative strength or high strength and a plethora of duration. Everything's a lot simpler, easier to understand, and easier to mod. So how does she really perform now? Well, whenever she casts her fourth skill, she can either hold it or quick cast it. So quick cast, well, these guys are frozen. Hold on. Quick cast would be their slow. Speed cast, they're very fast. Okay? And depending on how you kill them, whether they're quick or slow. If they're quick, they will spawn energy. If they are slow, they will spawn health. And why that is important is because we are going to be using the specific mod Health Conversion. Health Conversion gives you a whole bunch of armor that'll allow you to increase your EHP, your effective health points, at the same time making you even harder to kill. So we have the DR skill from skill 1 that hasn't really changed, and the DR that you get with all the extra armor. The other benefit is an arcane that we got not too long ago called Arcane Battery. I've decided to combine that because with my build it's going to be a little bit more nuanced. You don't have room for all the mods you want, so if we actually increase her armor with health conversion and then walk over and maximize her energy, we now have 778 instead of around the 380 we had, which is really nice because we completely tanked our efficiency. So let's talk about the build real quick. So number 1, we have growing power. Like I mentioned before, strength is actually something you want to mod for when considering Nova and her rework. Her 4th skill, 2nd, and her 3rd or 4th actually require strength in all aspects now. You no longer have to decide between negative strength and high strength or a ton of duration, etc. So before, you had to crank your duration like crazy. You probably weren't using her other 2 skills like her 3rd or 4th, and you've probably noticed I actually took off her portal and replaced it with Resonator. We'll get into that in a minute, but namely I want to remind everyone that Null Star and all the functions of her kit now require strength. Now there are some things that scale and don't scale, so the damage reduction cap is not affected by strength. It's always going to be capped at 90. The antimatter drop, her 2nd skill, that damage absorption multiplier, is always going to be capped at 8 times. And her 4th skill, molecular prime, damage vulnerability, will always be capped at 200%. So there's no way to increase that, which is fine. So our strength for this build is going to be 199%. That is going to easily get us to 20 antimatter particles. And if you know 20 times 9, that's well over the 90%. So you could actually lower the strength if you'd like. However, that will affect how fast or how slow you make the enemy. So I feel at around 200%, that's great. You can't go over 75. So anything below, I believe, 170 will get you below 75%. So this blind rage, you don't have to run. You could run transient fortitude. I just prefer not having any sort of thing reducing my duration, since everything here, especially with Resonator, which like I said, we'll get into, requires duration. So we have prime continuity, duration, Archon stretch. Now I'm using the Archon version because the Archon version actually can be procced by your companion, and thanks to the companion rework, there are more companions in the game that can apply electricity other than the DR gun, which is great. Archon vitality, why am I using this? Well, we're actually using both augment mods, neutron star and molecular fission. So the way these work is you cast your 1, and your 1 will apply the 4th skill debuff, slow or speed up, and when you kill those enemies, it will refund your 1 as well. Now, part of the rework, like you saw in the beginning, is you can recast your 1 regardless of this augment or not, which you couldn't before, but now casting this over and over will apply those heat damage ticks, which is really nice, which helps reduce armor and things like that, and makes them more susceptible to condition overload type things, making them take more damage, which is what you want. So with that, we have neutron star, molecular fission. Now, health conversion. Why am I using this? Health conversion, like I mentioned, very, very strong with Nova. As you can see, we don't have prime flow. So why are we using health conversion? Health conversion gives us a ton of armor, which is already going to be combined with our 90%. So that 90% may say 90%, but when you factor in adaptation and health conversion, you can actually turn that into like 99% DR. Obviously, you can't have 100%, otherwise you'd be invulnerable. So that that fraction continues to increase until there's multiple 9s repeating. So you become very, very tanky, hard to kill. Now, because we have so much armor, it's 450 times 3 plus the base 360 we have, which will enable our Archon battery to give us almost 800 energy without prime flow. And because our efficiency is so low, we're going to be utilizing Arcane Energize on top of that to maintain that our energy is always capped out because I actually prefer spamming her 1 and her 2 in groups of ads like you saw in the gameplay at the beginning. Resonator. Why am I using Resonator? Well, cool thing about Resonator is that it's another form of CC, which is excellent for Nova. Plus, it does blast damage. How cool is that? So it not only CCs the already CC'd enemies, but you're going to be extremely tanky. They're going to be following this stupid thing and not damaging you. But if they do, then you're fine because you can just regen all of your stuff and continue that cycle of crowd control. Very, very strong. Now, obviously, you can put whatever subsume ability you want. I don't plan on using her portals, even though those did get reworked, but they essentially function the exact same way, except for a small quality of life for charges and see where that portal ends up. But we will not be using that for this build. We are using another form of CC, enabling you to, take all the time you need to fully damage your antimatter drop, getting that 8 times multiplier active. Now, the highest damage I could see with this thing was about 830,000 damage AoE. Now, the radius is, you can crank your radius even more if you want, but I think at 21 meters is just fine because most rooms are not that huge in these tile sets. This should be more than enough range for you, more than enough damage. So that's why we only have like 1 strength mod, and that's why we're tanking our efficiency, because we have all these safeguards in place to maintain our energy levels and health and armor up at all times. Because as you probably saw too, Molecular Prime, her 4th skill, sped up enemies will drop energy, slowed enemies will drop health. Now, it's not all the time. There's a chance for it to drop, and it doesn't state what that chance is, but I'm assuming it's maybe like 20 or 30%. But when the health drops, health conversion procs. When the energy drops, arcane energized procs. So again, you're just kind of feeding into this build. It feeds into itself. It's really, really fun, very spammy, very fun to play. Furthermore, Violet Archon Shard. We are using this because it's just another form of keeping health and energy up at all times. Casting speed, you're going to be spamming your abilities quite a bit. You don't want to be stuck in that animation. You want to be shooting your ads. You want to be shooting your antimatter drop. Go ahead and put a yellow shard on. The blue shard is something you can consider not doing. This is just something I wanted to do. Again, the extra armor works with health conversion, works with arcane battery, more survivability, not mandatory. The red shard is giving me an extra 15 that helps me hit 170. This is a comfortable duration I'm happy with, because again, the 4th skill still scales its range or its expanding nature with duration. That's never been scaled with range. So the extra duration is very, very important. This is sort of a weird one though. Since Nova does all forms of blast damage now, I thought, well, what more survivability do you want than killing whole rooms in a single explosion, which will keep your shields up at all times thanks to the orange shard. Super, super helpful. I think you guys probably saw that in the gameplay. As far as weapons, again, these are, I think everybody is very familiar with Torrid, Furus, and Dual Ichor at this point. But again, you can use whatever weapons you want. Now, I was actually utilizing the Helmuth Charger for that gameplay, and you probably saw him die a lot. I'm still sort of tinkering with him, so I won't really get too much into his build here because a lot of things have changed, and I'd like to dedicate a video to that on its own. But if you're curious, this is what I was running. Like I said, electricity is now applicable to companions, so I went ahead, or more companions, so I went ahead and added this new mod called Shocking Claws. Now, I can't tell you how to get this. A lot of these new items with this update, I was actually gifted to by DE. So, because I'm a partner, so a lot of these mods, such as this one and this one, and this one, I just received. Okay. So these were gifted to me by DE, part of the partner program. So I can't tell you exactly how to receive these. I'm assuming they drop in the new mission, or with the new vendor that sells the new Warframe Koumei's parts. I'm assuming that's where they are. And that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Tell me what you think about the build. What do you think about the Nova rework? Stay tuned. I will be uploading about 2 more videos on my channel today and a few more throughout the week. I unfortunately am a little upset that the Incarnans were not released at the time of this update, but they will be released with the following weekly reset Sunday afternoon, which I guess works out a little bit better because I don't work weekends. So pretty cool. But I will see you for the Incarnans on Sunday, and look out for some more videos on my channel regarding this update later today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.